So, welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So, this is episode 72, which is a really great group chat that we just had with Chris Brucia, who's a VP of product at Medely. So, Medly is the largest on demand labor marketplace for healthcare staffing. So, prior to Medely, Chris led product at Grubhub and Atom Tickets. So, he had some really incredible marketplace experience. So, this is a really great group chat with Chris, where we got to learn more about his past experience leading product at top marketplaces, more on Medly as a labor marketplace, some unique product insights, and also had a really great Q&A for those that were on the chat. So really enjoyed this conversation, and I know you're going to find it a great watch to the end. So Chris, welcome to the group chat, and it's definitely great to have you join us here today. So you have some really incredible experience leading product at top marketplaces like Grubhub, Atom Tickets, and now Medly, which I'm really excited to learn more about. Before we jump into things, though, I think it'd be really great if you could start off by sharing a little bit more on your background for those that don't know you here.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Chris. I live in the LA area and have for almost 6 years now. Dragged my family all over the U.S. previous to that, and really my career was actually I started by wanting to be a sports writer. So I have a journalism degree. Really thought I wanted to be in the sports writing world. But I went to college at a time where it was becoming clear year by year that the internet was going to destroy traditional media. So ended up not pursuing that as a career. And shortly after graduating, ended up at Amazon in Seattle, initially doing more marketing things, and then actually kind of fell into product management accidentally. I didn't even know what product management was the day I sort of became a product manager. A team I was on had been dissolved, and I got moved to another team, and they were like, "You're a product manager now." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, what does a product manager do?" And the response was basically like, "Well, you better figure it out." So fortunately for me, learned that I liked it a lot, and it actually kind of like very similar to being a journalist. So like if you're a journalist and you get assigned a story, chances are you don't necessarily know everything there is to know about it, and you have to kind of be able to embrace that ambiguity and figure out how to become enough of an expert that you can tell the story to other people in a way that they would understand. And I think that has a lot of overlaps with product management in general. No matter where you're working, like invariably you're going to end up doing things that you don't already know how to do or aren't a full expert in out of the box, and you need to figure it out. So that's kind of how I wrap my mind around it. I spent almost 7 years at Amazon in a variety of product roles, and then eventually, by that time I had moved to New York. So I joined what then was called Seamless, which was the #1 food delivery service in New York. And 6 months after I joined, we announced that we were merging with Grubhub, which was like our blood rivals at the time. So went through like a big merger and then eventually an IPO. Super exciting time. Like the company was 150 people when I joined, and 4 years later we had over 1,000 people. So it was just crazy growth all around, up and down the organization. After doing that for 4 years, a friend of mine had started Atom Tickets. I'm a huge movie nerd, and Atom Tickets is basically like a better version of Fandango. So moved out, became the first product person at Atom Tickets. Actually joined the company the day that we launched the product publicly. So got to experience going from 0 customers to millions of customers there. Was really like loving the job. Super tricky, tough business model. Which was very much exacerbated by the pandemic. So once became clear that it would be unclear how long movie theaters would be closed for, ended up moving over to Medly, which is in the healthcare staffing space, which has had the exact sort of results from the pandemic. It was like a super fast-growing business, and Medly basically works the same as Grubhub. So Grubhub is restaurants matching up with hungry people, and Medly is healthcare facilities like hospitals, surgery centers, and urgent cares who do a lot of contingent and shift-based staffing for nurses and medical techs, matching up with pre-qualified and vetted nurses and medical techs. So it's a lot, almost like an Uber-like experience for facilities. Facilities can say, "Oh, I need a nurse that has this kind of skill set on Wednesday from 9 to 5. We'll share that opportunity with nurses in that market who we know can work that kind of job. And basically the first nurse to click the book button books the job, They show up on Wednesday, work the job, and they get paid on Thursday. So it's really sort of like great model, kind of like busting up traditional staffing agencies, which are like super inefficient and very costly for facilities, and creates a lot of work flexibility for nursing professionals, many of whom don't want to work full-time jobs where you have to work the kind of same shift like 5 days a week. So I've been there for about 15 months now, and things are going pretty well, I think.
Awesome. That's quite the background. Couldn't think of a better place to get started in the world of a product than Amazon too, by the way. So
Yeah, I mean, you definitely learn a lot working there for sure.
Certainly. So, going back to Grubhub, that's a pretty incredible marketplace. Could you share a little bit more about, maybe what time period that was at? I know you did briefly, but a little bit more about, what you're working on there and maybe some of the challenges of it as a marketplace.
Sure, yeah. So I joined Grubhub in the fall of 2011, I think it was, or 2012, I should say, 2012. And at the time, like Seamless and Grubhub were two separate companies. So Seamless was very, very strong in New York and had not been successful expanding to other markets. Like we were in other markets, but we didn't have big market share or brand awareness, or things had just not gone super awesome. So the core of our business was, consumer food ordering, and then we also had a very healthy corporate ordering business. So many of the banks and investment firms, Goldman Sachs, American Express, those types of companies had corporate ordering accounts, and they would provide lunch benefits to their employees. So that was actually like that made a lot of money for the company. I joined to help kind of rebuild the product team. So first few months, just doing a lot of recruiting and hiring, and trying to basically hire 5 product managers. And then pretty much literally right at the point that I finished that was the point where we like announced that we were merging with Grubhub, who was the other big player in food delivery. There was no Uber Eats at the time, and there was no DoorDash yet. And Grubhub had the opposite problem. So they were very strong in other markets through acquisitions they had made, particularly in like college towns. They were based in Chicago, so they were big there. But they had not gotten a foothold in New York. So they had tried and failed to IPO the previous year, and they failed basically because they couldn't show that they had a plan on how to get into New York, where food ordering behaviors are 5 to 10x more frequent than they are in any other city in the U.S. Because basically no one in New York cooks. It's actually cheaper to go to order delivery food than it is to buy groceries there. So at post merger, like my focus changed to figuring out like how we were going to like bring together two businesses that were basically the same, like up and down the line. Like, we each had our customer data, we had our delivery map data, we had our menu data, we had our restaurants, but we were basically in all the same restaurants, written in 2 different tech stacks. So Seamless was unfortunately like a .NET setup, which made recruiting really hard in the US. There aren't many like .NET developers in the US anymore. It's not really considered like a modern, interesting language for most engineers. Grubhub was slightly better as Java. But we didn't need all this duplication. So I spent probably like a year and a half working on a project to basically like migrate everything over to a new shared tech stack that was based in Java. And then rebuilding all of our products across web and iOS and Android for both brands to connect to that like new set of data. And then we also rebranded and reskinned everything. So it was a long project, a lot of work. We were doing a ton of hiring during this time as well. So it was super duper busy. But we were also able to introduce like a lot of interesting new features. Like we built a data science team, and we started doing dish level recommendations, so that if you ordered chicken pad thai and liked it at this one restaurant, like we could identify other chicken pad thai dishes that you would probably like from other restaurants. Because one of the drivers of frequency is not letting customers in food delivery like just fall into ordering the same 2 or 3 things over and over again. It's very easy to do that. Like, all these sites have like easy reordering. And sometimes you just want to have that grilled cheese sandwich. But if people only order a grilled cheese sandwich, like eventually they will just kind of stop using the platform altogether because they get bored and they don't want to explore. So one of our focuses was on how do we try to like let people reorder the things that they like, but also try and expose them to new things that we think they would like as a way to sort of like incentivize more frequent ordering. We introduced food photography. We revamped our ratings and review system. So we did a bunch of interesting and cool things, I think, that improved the product. But also we were trying to like get ourselves set for the future, which was basically being able to develop features and functionality for both brands only one time. So we got that done probably in early 2015. And then in January of 2016, I left because I decided that I was going to move to LA. I didn't like commuting from New Jersey to New York, where we had moved. So I'm the only person to ever move to LA, thinking that he would get a better commuting time.
I love it. So yeah, that's certainly interesting to learn more about it, considering the scale it's at today with Grubhub. But yeah, so you did mention with the move here to LA, Atom Tickets is definitely a startup here in LA that many know about. So could you share more about initially kind of joining the Atom team and then what you're working on there?
Sure, yeah. So like I said, like I joined the day that the product launched. So like they had built the V1 of the product. So the first few months I was there, we were kind of rolling out the product across the country. So I don't know what everyone knows about the movie theater business, but there are basically like three major movie theater chains and then a lot of regional chains. So Regal, AMC, and Cinemark are the three biggest. So they represent about 65% of tickets sold in the US, and have about that number of locations. So we had actually initially launched in Canada in March with Landmark Theaters, who's like the #2 theater chain in Canada. And then we had signed AMC and Regal. And then throughout the summer, we were launching with them. And then throughout that period, we were also launching regional competitors like ArcLight, which, rest in peace, which is no longer around, but it was a big chain in the LA area. Like Imagine Theaters, which is a big one in like the Michigan, Minnesota area. And like numerous others that are, have different geographic sort of concentration. So our original product, it was a mobile app. We actually didn't even have a transactional website when we launched. And then we also had a piece of physical hardware, which was basically like a custom Android tablet that we would set up at theaters that theaters could use to scan all tickets, like Atom tickets, Fandango tickets, tickets that you bought from AMC directly. And then also had a set of features that would allow theaters to pre-sell concessions, which is a very common feature today. But I think Atom was actually the first company to offer that. So if you went to a Regal Cinema, for example, you could buy your tickets on the Atom app, and during that transaction, you could also like add a popcorn, add a soda, add a candy. And when you got to the theater, that food would be prepared for you, and you could just walk up to the Atom lane, scan your QR code, and they would go get your items and hand them to you. So you didn't have to wait in line. It was actually pretty cool when it worked. First 6 months we were just kind of rolling out, and then after that, like my focus became more on how do we improve the experience, like what new features can we add, which we added like a ton of things. We did a bunch of really interesting partnerships with T-Mobile, where T-Mobile customers would get a $4 movie ticket every month. We partnered with Amazon to do Prime movie screenings, so Prime members could get access to see a movie 2 weeks before it came out in theaters. So we did that a few times. That was actually the first Prime benefits that Amazon ever offered, like off of Amazon directly, which was really cool. So we partnered with studios who would do big ad buys on Amazon, and then we would sort of execute getting the screening set up, and we would be the source of ticketing. And as an Amazon Prime user, you would just come to Atom, link your Amazon account, which would check your Prime status, and then you would be kind of unlocked to be able to buy those tickets, which was kind of cool. We also did some partnerships with Disney to sell merchandise with tickets for some big Star Wars and Marvel movie releases. So lots of cool things. I think I mentioned when I was talking about Adam before, like business model margins very challenging in movie ticketing. Studios and movie theaters take all of the ticketing revenue. So in order for Atom Tickets business model to work, we really needed to scale our customers in order to be able to have enough of a base for advertising and sponsorships to be a meaningful line of revenue. So it's really, really kind of real tricky to kind of figure out what to do. And that's really where those like focus on partnerships with big companies that have a lot of customers came into focus, because there was really no way to like grow our audience by just buying like Facebook ads, for example. Like, acquiring customers that way is pretty expensive, and it gets less efficient over time. Paled in comparison with our ability to reach like millions and millions of people in one shot with, these consistent T-Mobile promotions or with Amazon or stuff like that. So like a lot of our focus ended up being on like, well, how do we partner up? Customers have like a very high perceived value on movie tickets, even though the cost is relatively low if you're a company like T-Mobile trying to run interesting promotions. So we ended up spending a lot of time on that, built a lot of cool features in addition, like the merchandising feature, concessions, and things like that.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing more with us on that. Certainly sounds challenging. So what were maybe some of the biggest learnings, from your time at Grubhub and then Atom Tickets that you've taken with you to now Medley?
Sure. I think like in both cases, and this is definitely true at Medley, your customers for a marketplace are obviously like paramount importance, right? And marketplaces by definition have more than one primary customer. So, at Grubhub, we had to be thinking about, while my organization was focused on the consumer experience. So we were trying to figure out how to like help hungry people, get the food that they wanted. Like we very much had to collaborate with the teams that were focused on servicing the restaurants. Restaurants in that business get like a tablet, it spits out all the orders, they can like mark things out for delivery and all this stuff. So like there's a lot of like coordination that goes on there to create like a great experience. But in both cases, I think like there's also a third customer, which is like important to remember, which are like internal users. So Grubhub, was a lot of people, so we had resources to dedicate to that. But like at Atom and at Medley, like we're smaller companies, so we have to make sort of like very explicit choices on how to sort of spend our bandwidth. But if you sort of forget about, like things that can help create more efficiencies or automation for the teams that are trying to support the business, like you can end up getting yourself in trouble. So, at Medley, we definitely try to make sure that we understand, we have a marketplace and it largely works, but underneath the covers, there's still like a lot of like people who are like pressing buttons and trying to move, applicants from one stage to the next and things like that. And like, if we don't, those are things that are like not as easy to tie to like, well, if we do this, like revenue will go up by X%. But like, if you ignore those things for a long time, like you create like a lot of pain, and B, you also can create like the need and requirement to hire like an astounding number of people to like press the buttons faster or press more buttons or do things. And then at some point you're going to hit a point where like you're going to be in kind of an ugly situation where, maybe now you've solved those problems and now you don't need all those people. And like, that's not really like, if that happens, it happens, but like, you don't want to like set out to be like, okay, we're going to hire all these people. And then like a year from now, we're going to let them all go. Over time, I've kind of learned that it's important to really think about what are smart things that you can do, that you can spend time on, that will reduce anything that could lead to like a crazy linear lift in hiring for roles that you don't really think you're going to need over a long period of time.
Awesome, that's great, and that's probably going to prompt quite a few questions here when we get into the Q&A, since we're mainly earlier stage marketplaces. So transitioning into Medley more now, which I'm excited to chat about. I would love it if you could start off maybe by giving us kind of like a high level overview of it as a marketplace.
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, it's in the healthcare space. So, in the US, probably 12 to $15 billion a year is spent by healthcare facilities hiring nurses and medical techs. And medical techs you could think of as like radiology technicians or sonographers, people who are using specialized equipment. And they're doing hiring on a shift-based or short-term contract basis. So if you've ever heard the term travel nursing, that basically, excuse me, that basically means that nurses are signing like 2 to 4 month contracts to like work at a hospital, which is a very common thing like pre-COVID. It's definitely a very common thing like during the pandemic, and will continue to be like a common thing going forward. A lot of nurses get into nursing to do travel nursing. And then there's also an equivalent amount of money spent on per diem staffing or shift-based staffing. And the reason for that is that if you were to take like a surgery center, for example, a surgery center is just a building with one or more operating rooms in it. And the way it works generally is that surgeons will reserve the rooms to perform their surgeries. And nursing is a very specialized industry. So nurses have to do, there's tons of regulation, there's lots of licensing and training and things like that. So nurses are generally not like plug and play. So you can't, like, if you run a surgery center, you don't know what kind of surgeons are going to come in and want to use the operating room on any given day. So it's really hard to have a staff of full-time nurses that are qualified to work any kind of procedure that might come in the building, and then have enough of them if there's multiples of the same procedure happening at the same time. So as a result, they end up hiring people basically by the procedure. Traditionally, they would call a staffing agency. The staffing agency would email over a bunch of resumes. The facility would have to look at them, and then they would say like, "Oh, I want to interview, this person or that person, or can you send me this person's credentials and licenses, or is this person available on Wednesdays?" Like super inefficient, back and forth, back and forth. Like sometimes surgeries are booked like the day before, so like it doesn't leave a lot of time to be going back and forth. Staffing agencies also charge like a really big markup because of all this back and forth and inefficiency. So Medly kind of like takes that out. So on the pro side or the nursing side, nurses sign up for Medly. They have to like provide all their licenses and credentials. We actually do a phone interview to like check to make sure that we think that they could like represent Medly well and that they know what they're talking about and can do the things that they say they can do. So basically, by the time the facility is posting, the surgery center is posting for this procedure they need to fill, like there is no need for them to interview the pro. We can provide all the licenses and credentials as soon as the pro books the job. And only pros who are available are booking it. So there's no need to go back and forth about availability. So from the facility's perspective, it's way more efficient. It's kind of much more hands-off. Like, director of nursing, who are normally the people who are doing this, like can literally go on their phone and they can post a job in like 30 seconds. And 80% of the jobs that they post are filled within an hour. So it's hyper efficient. Our ability to sort of take out the back and forth means that we can charge like a smaller markup on the hours worked to the facility. So it's actually cheaper for the facility to use Medly. And it's much less sort of like intellect, time and brain overhead for them to be staying on top of like, well, who do I have working? Like, have I talked to all these people and things like that? It's an interesting business, not something I thought I would necessarily ever work in, but the more you kind of like learn about it, the more kind of interesting it is, and the demand for nursing is like insatiable. Americans need so much healthcare, for better or for worse, that being in nursing as a nurse is like a really, really great work opportunity right now. It's also can be very stressful if you're working with COVID patients and stuff like that, but there's unlimited demand for people to fill jobs. So it's a great spot to be in if you want to be able to work and get paid like quite a bit of money for the work you're doing.
Thanks, Raj. Thanks for sharing with us on that. Yeah, I was actually going to ask, as far as, it's a supply or kind of demand constraint, but you did mention the demand's kind of through the roof right now.
Yeah, like our biggest concern going into Q4, which is actually like a peak. So in Q4, that's when everyone's healthcare spending accounts like run out at the end of the year. So you start to see a lot of elective procedures get scheduled between October and December because people have already taken the money out of their paycheck and they want to use it. So like our biggest focus in Q4 is like, how do we keep our fill rate up? Because for us, if facilities post jobs and they don't get filled, that means surgeries have to be postponed or canceled. There's a lot of like sort of like negative impact. And for our business, the cost of losing a facility as a Medly user is significantly more painful than like if a single nurse decided that they didn't like the platform and they signed off. Like, for better or for worse, like they're making more nurses all the time, but like certain new surgery centers are built at like a much slower pace. So if we sign up a facility, we really want to focus on making sure we can deliver them, quality nurses and be able to fill almost all the jobs that they're posting.
So I'm kind of curious to learn more about that. So when you sign up a facility, like typically how many nurses are they looking for, and like what's the frequency of that like?
It can really vary. We have some facilities that, and it's really like the other thing that's really interesting I think about Medly, and which is also very similar to Grubhub, is like Medly is a national product. We're in most major markets, but we're really like each market is really its own business. Like the dynamic, like, because if you're an ICU nurse in LA, like that doesn't help us in Houston or Miami or New York. Like we need to also have like a good roster of ICU nurses like in those markets if those are the kinds of jobs that are being posted there. So, in the 15 months I've been here, we've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out how do we slice and dice our data to really kind of understand the performance at that level, because there are different, you need to pull different levers in different scenarios. Sometimes we have an excess of jobs being posted and we don't really have enough professionals in that market. So we have to figure out how do we get more ICU nurses in Dallas? So like, let's go do that. Whereas like in Nashville, like they might be the reverse. Like we might have very few ICU jobs being posted and we have a lot of ICU nurses signed up. So now the ICU nurses are logging into Medly and they're checking for work opportunities and they're not seeing anything. So they're getting frustrated that they thought they were signing up for this platform that would give them a lot of opportunities. And in the reality in that moment is like, they're not seeing that. So it's like, in a labor marketplace, like it's really important to have that balance. Whereas like in Grubhub, like, of course you want to have restaurants and you want to have selection, but like, you don't have the same thing where it's like, well, I only eat hamburgers and there are no hamburgers available in Los Angeles. Like that's like very unlikely to be a scenario. So our big focus is, how do we make sure that we can have the right balance and try to ensure that a facility has a great experience. So to get back to your question, some facilities might only post like a couple jobs a week, and some facilities might post dozens of jobs every day. And we need to be able to satisfy those demands. Because like I said, like the impact of not filling that job for a facility is that it's going to have to be rescheduled. Or like there's a surgery that's going to be rescheduled. So like there's a sort of a chain of inconvenience that happens that you don't want that to happen repeatedly.
Yeah, that's interesting. It actually has, serious implications on the facility side.
Yeah.
Procedures. I didn't realize that until you just said that. So you actually covered a point that I wanted to, bring up, which is almost on, how you think about kind of managing the liquidity and kind of the health across various markets as a localized marketplace. So, what are some ways, I know you went into it kind of briefly, but, what are some ways that maybe you're thinking through that? And then like even some kind of metrics to measure?
Sure. So we look at our, one of our primary metrics is fill rate, like I said. So we, across at a high level, we look at like the amount of volume of jobs that are being posted, the average length of the shifts, which helps us understand like what is the value of the shifts that are being posted for pros and for Medly. And basically our business model works that facilities will pay a rate to us, and then which includes our basically like our markup, and then we translate that to the rate that a pro sees when they're signing up for the job that they ultimately get paid. So we strive to pay like basically top of market for pros. And then we add our markup on top of that. So we look at the sort of volume of jobs being posted. We look at our, the length of shifts, and we look at our fill rate. And then we slice and dice that down by position and by market. And we have like our, probably like our 5 core markets, which are a lot of them are in California because that's where the company started. So we have like the most maturity in those markets. And then we have like a set of strategic growth markets that we're looking to like improve upon. So those are the ones that we look at the most, but we do try to like keep our eyes everywhere so that we can understand what's going on. And then other things that we look at are, facilities can rate the pros they get, pros can rate the facilities they work at. So we try to also keep an eye on like, are pros satisfied with the experience they're having when they go to facilities, and vice versa? Like, are facilities indicating that the pros that they're being sent are ones that they like? So for a period right now where there's a lot of demand, we're also implementing additional options for facilities to try to attract talent. And this is a business where kind of like money talks. So every market we have set rates, hourly rates for pros that all facilities are sort of like assigned. But currently we're building some new functionality that can allow a facility on a per job basis to up their offer. Because like this is like literally what facilities are asking for, is they're trying to figure out a way to stand out. And they're saying like, well, I know that the normal rate is $80 an hour, but I'm willing to go up to 120. Like, how do I do that? So we're working on building some new UI that would let people say like, this is a really important job and I'm willing to go like above or well above what the normal rate is. And then obviously like we can show that in a way to pros so they know that they're like this facility like really wants somebody, like you can make a lot of money if you take this shift.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So we won't get into too much into the nuances because I feel like you and I could probably chat for quite a bit and
Oh, sorry,
save
yeah.
some time here for the group. But I did want to ask, as a VP of product, like what are your primary roles and responsibilities, and like what is a day like in the life of the VP of product at Medley?
I would say that I probably spend different chunks of time on working with other groups in the company to understand what are things that are working, what are things that are not working, and they're part of the business, so that myself and my team can kind of think about how might we be able to help. We're really trying to like move from what has been previously like a pretty bootstrap business with like like I said, like a lot of people pressing keys, to trying to really kind of like weed out where can we add efficiencies and automation so that we can get things posted faster. We can submit, pros can get kind of like book jobs and be submitted back for travel assignments faster. So spend a lot of time on that. Spend a lot of time on recruiting. It's been a really tough hiring environment for the past, this whole calendar year, really. Like it's very, very competitive out there. So and we have a lot of needs across product management, design, and engineering. So we spend a lot of time interviewing, a lot of time recruiting. And then I spend a lot of time with my team, kind of like working through different initiatives that we're kind of focusing on, and how those are coming along, and seeing where I can help unblock things or add value, I guess. So the percentage of those three things every day is probably different, but those are probably like the three biggest buckets of how I spend my time.
Awesome. And then what is the team size like, and kind of like org structure?
Sure. So when I started, it was the co-founder and CEO was doing product and design by himself. So now it's myself. We have 3 PMs, and we have one starting soon. We have 2 designers and one starting soon. Our engineering team's gone from 4 to about 15. And we're just hiring until someone tells us that we have to stop. And then I also manage QA, which is a little weird, but we have 2 QA people.
Awesome. So we're going to get into group questions here in a second. But I was curious to learn a little bit about, are there any maybe unique challenges with building a marketplace in the healthcare space that you didn't know coming into Medley that you've recently learned?
I mean, I think I sort of knew that it was like a regulated, like not tech forward kind of like industry, but like sort of like facing that in reality was a little bit of like a smack in the face. So I think we're working with hospitals and surgery centers and all that kind of stuff, and I think that like the kinds of software solutions that they're used to using to run their business are pretty terrible, and they don't get a lot of support, and they're also like not, they're not like millennial iPhone users who are like understand everything about tech and everything like that. So it's like it's been like a different lens to try to like really think about like, okay, is this thing we're designing is someone that's busy in a surgery center, and this is only like a small part of their job, going to be able to understand what they're supposed to do here. And then 2 is there's a lot of things about healthcare that are super inefficient, but there's no one player that I think can like really like move things forward. So there's just like there's a bunch of things that like I've just had to like I think come to terms with, like I can't change this the way that like it should really be in reality anytime soon, and we just have to kind of work around the fact that like like, no, of course, this is the super inefficient way that hospitals like make decisions or, or do this particular action. And like, until we can develop some software solution that they would use to do that for all the time, like we're not going to be able to change their behavior. So like we just have to figure out how to work around it in the best way possible. So it's definitely like not ideal coming from like a more product mindset, but it is reality. So that's been kind of like a big learning for me.
Awesome. So we're going to jump
Sure.
into questions. Hey, Tomas, did you want to jump on with the question?
Yeah, sure thing. Cool. Morning, Chris. Appreciate you
Hello.
taking the time to connect and share your experiences. Super helpful. One of the things I'd love to hear or a couple of things I'd love to hear your perspective on, especially from the product side, is really like one, how you maintain just like a constant inflow of potential product improvements, potential like future iterations, and then two, once you have all of that, those ideas coming in, how do you then manage that intake to then prioritize your roadmap moving forward effectively?
Sure. Yeah. So on the first question, we gather feedback in like a number of ways. So we actually use I don't know if you're familiar with Product Board. It's actually a pretty cool product. So we use Intercom for like feedback that people send us directly, either from facilities or as nurses. And we have that like hooked up into Product Board, and it basically comes in like an inbox. So we can, as product managers, like we can go through, like we talk to the customer support team all the time, and we sort of get their perspective on what are common themes and things like that. But we also have the ability to kind of like read through things one by one. And we've kind of just developed this process to kind of be able to tag things that fit into different kind of themes. And we sort of like collect that information, and then if we start to get like some consistent amount of feedback going, like we'll start to look at, okay, like maybe this is like an area that we should dig into a little bit more. So like a small example of that would be as part of the outcome of the pandemic, like people have moved around a lot, and Medly is a market-based business. So like you can only work jobs or see job opportunities if you live within a certain distance of the market that you're assigned to. So if you were living in Houston, you'd be assigned to Houston, and you would only see jobs that are in Houston. If you move to Baltimore, like you want to switch your market to Baltimore so you can see work opportunities in Baltimore. Pre-pandemic, people didn't move around that much. So the way that nurses would do that is they would contact customer service, and then they would get sent this form, and then they would fill it out, and then they would get it updated. Since then, like this is like, 1 out of every 10 pieces of feedback we get is like, oh, I've moved, like I need to change my market. So we were like, oh, like, we should probably create a way for pros to be able to do this themselves, so that we're not spending kind of customer service dollars just repeating, sort of sending out the same form over and over again. So that's what we did. We also have sort of developed some facilities that we're friendly with. So we work with them to kind of like, walk them through some prototypes and things that we're working on the facility side, when we're trying to figure out if like, do we feel like we're on the right track here? Is this actually solving a problem? And then we also do the same thing with sets of pros. We're also, I think, benefited by many of the employees of the company in other departments are former nurses. So we actually have like a really deep bench of knowledge of what it's like to be a nurse. Given that like 60% of the employees their most recent job before coming to Medley was like, I was a nurse in a hospital or in a surgery center or stuff like that. So we do lean on that because it's efficient, but we do also try to get out and talk to people who are using the platform to actually work now. So in terms of like, how does that all kind of translate? Like, we have our kind of business OKRs that we set every quarter. We have kind of like our high level goals. So we try to look at sort of different opportunities or requests or, pieces of feedback that we're getting through the lens of like, how do these things help the company get where we want it to go? and try to make sure that we're spending like a big percentage of our time on that. But then, like I said earlier, like I think it is important to pay attention to like things like internal tools and functionality, which like isn't necessarily as easy to trace up to like increasing revenue. So we do try to like reserve time in every sprint so that we can take care of some of these requests that people have that help them do their job better. So there's no exact science to that, but we do try to make sure that we're paying attention to it.
Cool. That's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tomas. That's a great question. Thanks, Chris. Hey, John, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So Chris, you talked a bit about partnerships and partnerships at the level of like Disney and some other large companies, but on a smaller scale, do you have some advice for kind of lessons learned about how to build partnerships in the early stages to help drive demand? Any lessons learned that would be applicable to somebody who has the supply but needs to kind of generate the demand, and partnerships as a vehicle to kind of help do that, and not at the scale of Disney, but smaller companies, maybe the 5 million.
Yeah. So this is probably not like the best answer, but I think that like for the opportunities that Atom Tickets was able to do, this is where like I kind of saw the power of like, you just need to find the right person to talk to, and that can be like a challenging thing when you're trying to like, who's the right person to talk to about Amazon, about a partnership. Like they have 500,000 employees. Like there's no person that's like the partnership person, right? Like there's any number, there's probably like hundreds of people who fit that bill. And it's like, well, just getting connected to the right person is really kind of the hardest thing. So like I'm not like a networker or someone who really kind of like does that kind of thing really well, but I definitely learned the value of having people in the company who do that well. One of our co-founders is like, he just loves talking to people. He knows a lot of people, and he like knows people who knows people. The biggest value that he brought to the company was being able to kind of get us into rooms that as a new company, we probably had really almost no business being in, but he was just kind of working his way through like his network and the network of people that he knew to try to get connected to, here's a person that is the right person to talk to. And like, if you can reach them, they would gladly meet with us. They just, didn't know we existed, obviously. And like sending them cold emails was not going to be the way to do it. So we really had to kind of like work the network angle. And that's how we got into T-Mobile. That's how we got into Amazon. We also were able to like make a ticketing deal with IMDb. Like all these things all just came out of like, okay, like who do I know that might know the person that we need to talk to, or at least be able to like know someone who knows that thing, and kind of just work our way through it. So, I think like if you have some ideas in mind of, who you might want to partner with, like that's one avenue to pursue, is like, who do you know that, or someone in your company that could start trying to like trace to like a person that you could actually talk to that might be able to like hear you out or connect you with a person who would be the person to kind of have those conversations with.
Okay. Thank you.
And by the way, Disney came out of, we were in their accelerator program. Okay. They were actually an investor in Atom in the Series B. So we got into their accelerator, and that's how that all kind of came to be. What kind of business are you in?
So two-sided expert marketplace for no code specifically. So people want to build apps with a no code tool like Bubble or Glide, helping them connect with a mentor who can help them with the problems that they're facing, get them to market faster, better, kind of,
Oh, cool.
So kind of an online platform for facilitating that, capturing the payments, capturing the payouts, and doing the actual video call. So I built.
What kind of like partners would you be looking for?
I think the obvious choice would probably be the makers of the no-code platforms. Like Bubble just got $100 million of funding. They've got to figure out how to increase that customer lifetime value of all their users, and they can only do that if they help them step up their game. Not everyone wants to pay a developer. Not everyone wants to do an 8-week boot camp. Some people want to do it themselves, just have that little extra help along the way. So I think there are some compelling arguments. The question is just, I'm not a skilled networker. I hate it, frankly. I've done it.
Yeah.
That's not what I like. So kind of just, figuring out how to kind of get those connections.
I don't like it either, but like, as someone who also has received like any number of cold emails over the years, like I don't think I've ever responded to a single one, because it's just like, I'm always like, how does this person get my email address? Like, I don't know anything about them. But like people who I've been introduced to through people that I know, like I've definitely had many of those meetings, because I'm like, okay, like, this person, is, kind of vouching for this person. Like, it's a more interesting way to kind of hear the story than just getting like a random email, which is just easy enough to kind of like scroll through or delete. Because it's like, you get those all the time, right? Like I've never once hired like an offshore development team, and I think I get like 7 emails a day from people, or LinkedIn requests from people who run like offshore development teams. And it's just all noise to me. It's just like, I'm not even going to read this, because it's like, it's like, I don't know anything about it and I'm not that interested. So yeah, if you can find your way to get connected to those folks, then like, I'm sure you'd have a much better chance, I think, being heard on your ideas.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question? Or I don't want to take away somebody else's time if somebody else has a question.
You can go for it.
You got the thumbs up.
All right. So kind of when you're trying to get to that mecca of network effect, right? While you're on your way there, and let's say you have the supply, but not enough demand, how do you keep the supply interested enough while you build the demand without just building? So I think the easier, the more common answer would be just build a tool that the supply really wants until you have the demand to kind of get them interested in that. Other than building tools that the supply is going to like, what else can you do to kind of keep the supply engaged?
So in this example, the supply are the mentors.
Yeah, or in your case, the supply would be the nurses, right? Like if you don't have
the supply for us is the jobs. So we like we need jobs to be posted first. So the way that we kind of approach it is like, we try basically like in a market. So we support like, let's say 25 different types of nursing positions. So in any given market, we might already have all 25. We might have 10 of those positions live. We might have, anywhere in between. So we basically try not to turn on a position in a market until we feel like we have enough like nurses who are signed up on Medly who could fill like an initial amount of postings. So what we would do, like in Houston, say, like, let's say that we had like 10 positions supported today, and we wanted to turn on PACU nursing. So we would look at all the facilities that we have in that market, how many of them are saying that they want to be able to post for PACU nurses. Not every facility has a need for that. And then we would look at our nursing pool and count up how many nurses had previously signed up for PACU. Nurses are specialized, but they can be qualified for more than one type of nursing position. So that would give us like a baseline of like, do we have enough of an initial pool to be able to turn this on? And if all these facilities start posting PACU jobs, like we would stand a good chance to be able to fill them. Because again, like the thing that we don't want is we don't want facilities posting jobs that just don't go filled, because that increases risk that they'll say like, well, Medly stinks. Like I'm gonna figure out another way to get these jobs filled. So if we don't have enough, then we have some like marketing playbook and stuff like that we would run in that market to try to attract more PACU nurses with kind of a message of like, PACU jobs are coming soon, like sign up now and be among the first people to have the opportunity to book those jobs when they become available. So we do that. And then the other option we have is like, for those facilities that want to post PACU jobs, like we don't have to turn them all on at the same time. So if we have like a limited supply of nurses, we could go to our most like valuable partners and allow them to start posting jobs, and then sort of like turn up how many facilities can post those jobs as we start to see more nurses that are qualified to work those in that market, like get onto the platform. So I don't know if that's like a great proxy for for your business, but that's how we sort of try to do it, is collect enough interest from nurses without promising like a specific start date. But we don't really start doing that until we feel like we're close enough that, within, 4 to 6 weeks that we should start seeing like facilities being able to post those opportunities. Because again, like, same token, like we don't want people signing up and then checking constantly and not seeing any opportunities and finding other ways to find work. Because, Medly is awesome, but it's not, for a nurse, is not the only way for them to find job opportunities. So we're competing to try and keep their attention. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but
yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
That's a really great question. I was actually going to come on and ask kind of a relevant question to that myself. But we did have one in the, someone asked me in the community I wanted to be sure to ask, which was, going beyond the match for Medly, having kind of deeper value props with, some of the time tracking and some of the kind of tools for the facilities. They wanted to know, like, at what stage did you, offer that as a marketplace? Is that like from the very beginning, or is it like primarily start with a match and then you kind of like realize these further kind of needs and value prop and then develop those?
Oh, so I think if I understand the question, the answer is that the marketplace is like the first thing that Medly offered, the marketplace for per diem jobs. So the initial business was just shift-based work. Last year, last June, the company added support for, and I didn't talk about this too much because it gets confusing, the travel nursing business. So the per diem business is like on-demand booking, you confirm, you work the job, you're good. Travel nursing works differently. It's mostly from hospitals. And this is like a long-standing industry, and it works in a slightly different way. So a hospital will basically post a travel nursing opportunity, and that will get shared out to numerous staffing agencies. There's a couple of other online platforms that focus only on travel nursing and to Medly. Because the commitment is multiple months, there's more of a process to get someone hired. It's not just like be the first person to click book and you're good. Like oftentimes you're saying like, oh, I live in Miami, but yes, I will move temporarily to San Francisco to take this job. So pros have to apply for those, and then we submit our best candidates back to the hospital in competition with other companies, and then the hospital decides who they want to hire. So for us, there's a lot more things happening behind the scenes in order to basically like prepare a pitch for the pro or pros who we want to submit to try to get them to be the people who are hired by the hospital ultimately. So that was kind of like the second layer on the marketplace that launched last year. And then going forward, we're looking to build more what we would call like workforce management tools. So a lot of the things that we do for our pros, like checking their licenses, there's these things called skill assessments, which are these like really annoying long surveys that pros have to fill out every year. These are all things that could be products that healthcare facilities could take advantage of for their entire workforce, whether they come from Medly or their internal full-time people or their other, contractors that are hired through other channels. So like I think the next phase of our business will be more focused on how do we take these individual pieces that make up our marketplace and make them available in a different way for facilities to be able to leverage more broadly across their employee base.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's exactly what they were looking to learn more about. Cool. So I think we have time for one more question. Davey, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to try to be.
Oh yeah, the question guy. I haven't heard from you yet. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Chris. I just had a question because from what I've read, like a third of the death from the hospital are causing because of medical errors. So how do you make sure that the nurses or the medical staff that you have the right skills? How do you check those skills? And do you also have like a kind of feedback system? Because basically you put someone within a team that's going to maybe operate someone else. What kind of insight do you get from that? And how do you rate those people within your platform, making sure that they are the right fit and you're not making a big mistake that can actually cause like a serious troubles?
For sure. So like generally, like the staffing that we're providing are support for surgeries. So they're not using the scalpels and stuff like that. But like for sure, they need to be qualified. So, every position that we support on our platform has a different set of requirements of licensing and credentialing that a pro has to provide to us before we allow them to book those jobs. So basically, if you want to work on Medly as a nurse, you have to like fill out, like do an online application. You have to do, we do a background check. We do a phone interview. And then you also have to like fill out these assessments and provide these licenses. And the types of licenses and credentials you need, you also need to provide your work history. Licenses and credentials are kind of standard across the industry. So like we ask for the same thing that like a hospital would ask for if you went to like get a job directly from them. So and they can be sort of different. Like there's a couple of baseline things like, everyone has to have like a basic life support certificate. You have to have like a ACLS thing. I forget what it stands for. And then some types of nursing jobs have more specific requirements that you also have to provide. Like sometimes you have to provide like proof of a medical certificate that you took like 2 years of training, stuff like this. So that's all provided. When the nurse books the job, we send all that information. We provide all that information to the facility. So then the facility can look at it, and if they have any questions, we provide like a masked phone number. They can call the pro and like say like, oh, do you have any experience with like foot surgery or something like that, just to make sure that they can hear about that. Then when the pro is working or after the pro has worked, the facility can submit feedback. They can also favorite pros that they like, so that in the future, if they want that pro to have the opportunity to work a job again, they can actually send the opportunity only to that pro for a limited amount of time before anyone else would see it. So they could say like, oh, Sally was awesome. Like, let's give her 4 hours to like look at this job and hopefully she can work. By the same token, there's also a do not send list. So if the experience didn't go well for whatever reason, people didn't get along, or there was some problem, or the pro like broke a bunch of equipment or something like that, they can say like, don't send my job to this pro anymore. And our system will just basically like not show it to the pro will just never see an opportunity at that facility again. We won't tell them like, oh, this facility didn't like you. That you'll see other opportunities, but not necessarily that. Now, if you get do not sended by a number of facilities, like we also have a performance management team that, tries to identify pros who are maybe not representing Medly as well as they could, and can work with them to decide whether we're going to like basically like suspend them from the platform, or if there's some remediation steps that they can do to sort of like continue to be able to like book work.
Thanks a lot. And just to follow up with John's question, you also said that you have like competitors because like your workforce basically can find different jobs in different places. Mm-hmm. How do you make sure that your workforce actually stay loyal to your brand, to your platform? And what have you put in place to maintain this kind of engagement or loyalty?
Sure. So on the shift-based work, basically like when we sign up a facility, like we're basically the exclusive provider for jobs at that facility, because like we provide all the scheduling tools for the facility, like everything. So it becomes like really impractical for the facility to like be using Medly and then be also like calling staffing agencies on the side and trying to remember like who's scheduled where. So one is like we owe it to our pros to provide like as many work opportunities as they want. So like, supply, like liquidity of jobs is important. Two, we want to be paying like competitive wages. So we do a lot of work to monitor, what is a competitive wage. And right now that's changing almost by the day, because like demand is so high and facilities are getting so desperate, like the rates are just going up and up and up. So we're trying to keep up with, okay, what do we need our rates to be so that pros are feeling like, okay, I'm getting paid what I should be getting paid for the work that I'm doing. And we want, we want to pay pros quickly. So that's the other thing that we're really focused on. We just integrated with instant payouts from Stripe so that we could basically be able to pay people within an hour now. if they have a compatible bank account. And we want to make sure that we're sort of telling this whole story to pros in a way that they can like understand and value. So if we have the jobs opportunities and we're paying well and we're paying people quickly, like those are like some of the really big, I think, check marks that people are looking for, in terms of like, in exchange for their commitment of time, like they want to be able to like have a good experience and control how much work they do and get paid fast.
Thanks a lot. Do they get paid before they do the job? No.
Now you got to like clock in and clock out, and then we pay a couple almost every day. We run like a payment cycle, and then the money gets sent to your bank account.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for your questions, Davey. Well, cool. We're out of time here, but wow, this is a really great chat, and you have some pretty incredible experience, Chris. So, thanks for taking the time to join us and share more about it today. Before we wrap things up, though, time for a quick plug. Where can we keep up with you at?
Oh, me?
Yeah, we got. You have some new marketplace fans here. So where do we keep up with you at?
You could probably you could just send me a link request on LinkedIn is probably the best. I don't post a lot on Twitter or anything like that. Sorry to disappoint, but that's not me. So.
Awesome. Cool. I'll include it in the description of this. So cool. Well, thanks again for taking the time to join us, and thanks everyone for the great questions. So.
All right. Thanks a lot, everyone.